how can I use poetry and also create something that impacts people to achieve the goal that they want. I think about my students, and the better I understand who my students are, the more I can serve them and create something around it. 2025, no matter what your interest is in, you can find a way to build an entire life around it. I am about to create a new offer around poetry for my students. This is going to be something that is going to help my students achieve their goals while also using poetry as the medium. And I think that this is a strategy that you can also use if you're trying to create financial and creative independence around your art, regardless of the discipline. Let's talk more about it. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to Arts and Offers. This is the poetry podcast, all about that intersection between poetry and business. I'm alone today. It's just me. Hello, guys. My name is Geoff. And to give some background about this offer that I'm going to walk you through about how I'm going to give you ideas about something that maybe you can do on your own, I need you to understand that I am a teacher. I focus on pronunciation and communication. I've been doing that since right around 2010 with a focus on pronunciation and communication, especially around 2019, 2018, 2019. I've made a couple of YouTube channels around it. It's my primary source of income right now. But I'm trying to take all that knowledge I've learned from teaching and applying it to the poetry world because I believe that, hey, 2025, no matter what your interest is in, you can find a way to build an entire life around it. And so when I'm thinking about how can I connect poetry with, also financial stability and being able to live my life in a way that I dictate, I'm going to need to create offers. I'm going to need to create things that affect people and impact their lives so positively that they want to tell other people about it and they want to, pay for it because it's impacted them so greatly. Because I don't think people are against necessarily buying things. In fact, there's friends who have put out poetry books before that I'm very happy to pay them for it. There's pieces of art that people are willing to pay for. There's other forms of writing that people are willing to pay for. Anything that you bought, you were willing to pay for, or you decided that, hey, the value of this is more than the worth of the money that I have in my hand. And so in creating this, the first thing that I need to think about is who is this offer going to be helping? And the people that I'm picking are adults. They are people who have already learned English to a high degree. So for instance, they're not absolute beginners. They're people that if I give them a poem, especially one that I choose to write words for, they're going to be able to understand it without much difficulty. They are people who are interested in pronunciation, but are also, the fourth thing, interested in intellectual pursuits, artistic pursuits as well. For instance, like writing, like poetry. The other thing that I may need them to be open to, these are people who are interested in reading. These are people who are okay with reading out loud. These are people who are okay with the concept of recording themselves. These are people who are interested in learning self-directed to a degree through video. These are people who are already familiar with me and my pronunciation teaching. There's a couple of unique things that I do with pronunciation that a lot of other resources aren't covering. For instance, I'm covering concepts like where you're projecting sound from, like your placement. I'm covering topics related to airflow and breath. Just those two things alone, a lot of teachers aren't touching on. So the content I'm creating needs to touch on those points as well, because that's what my students expect from me in terms of my teaching style. Additionally, these are students who are interested in learning about elements of contrast. Contrast can be things like, how do you change up your speed? How do you change up the pitch you're using? How do you change up how firm you are or how soft you are? I'm telling you all this not to specifically tell you about my audience, but to give you the idea that, hey, when you're creating something for people, you need to know a lot of information about them. These are also people that are coming from diverse range of cultures that also They may or may not be living in the US. So these are things I'm creating a digital product that I'll tell you more about. But these are all the considerations I have because the more I think about my students and the better I understand who my students are, the more I can serve them and create something around it. So let's talk about what the product is that I'm thinking about. So again, I want to incorporate more poetry into it and I want to help my students achieve their goals, which is better communication. So what I've decided on is I want to create a booklet, but also a mini video course that targets specific sounds. Specifically, I'm targeting vowel sounds that I know my students tend to struggle with. English learners tend to struggle with. So I know that, okay, my learners have these issues with vowel sounds. They want to get better at that. However, they also want to get good at communication because just studying vowel sounds isn't going to be enough for that. So how can I practice communication with them? So what I've decided on is I want to create a booklet and video course that pairs together. It can also be an audiobook experience as well. That is going to, on my end, I need to create a series of haiku or short form poetry that utilize each specific vowel sound I want to study. So for instance, if I'm doing ah sounds, then I need to create a haiku that incorporates lots of different ah sounds in the word choice. I'll show you an example of what one of those haiku would look like as well. In addition to that, again, I'm worried about communication skills too. So one of the things that I'd like to do is pair with each haiku a specific sort of emotion or expression that wants to be conveyed. So for instance, maybe feeling of frustration, feeling angry, feeling happy, feeling nervous. And then for each haiku, we can talk about strategies to convey that emotion. So for happy, maybe some things we'll talk about is when I'm saying the haiku and when I'm teaching students about how to practice saying the haiku, we'll talk about things like, let's use some higher pitches. Let's maybe speed up some sections of it. Let's keep things bright. Let's smile because things like body language can help convey different emotions too, right? So these are the things that I need to consider for each of these haiku. I need to, one, write the haiku. I need to, two, record myself on video saying the haiku. I need to, three, create a mini lesson in relation to not only how to pronounce the vowel sound, but also how to focus on that level of expressiveness for whatever the emotion is that I'm trying to help them convey. Once I have the recording done, I obviously need to edit the recording. I need to create a package that gives them an audiobook or a physical book that they can purchase, a link to access the videos or just the audio. I need to put that on the website, which means I'm probably going to have to create a landing page. So like a specific page on the website where people can go to purchase it. If I create the physical book version, I need to create the physical book that I can upload probably through Amazon KDP. So I'll self-publish that, have that textbook ready. And then I need to market it. In fact, the marketing honestly is probably going to start soon. So we let people know that, hey, this is being created to push up, for instance, creating a wait list. And then most likely what we'll do is we'll have an initial launch. So I'll open with perhaps like a lower price. They'll then switch to a more expensive price after a month or so. So to get people interested in the pre-ordering. This is the process. I've decided, hey, I want to use poetry. How can I use poetry and also create something that impacts people to achieve the goal that they want? So I decide, hey, I'm going to use poetry and link it with American English pronunciation communication training. It's poetry and pronunciation, or it's poetry and English. For your own art, is there something that you could tie in with an area of interest? We've talked about before on the channel that some people are working on ways to connect. Oh, this is an example. I was working with a poet recently and we talked about this where he wanted to create a, not like a men's mental health group or like a social group to guide men that are going through difficulties in their life, like a men's support group. and he wanted to tie it in with poetry, include like some writing exercises and things like that. So that's another example. Maybe, for instance, you're really interested in a visual art form, and maybe what you want to do is maybe you want to help small businesses with their promotions or their outreach and exposure to people. Or maybe you're a musician and you want to create little mini, I don't know, maybe little mini soundtracks that companies can use as background for their videos. You know, whatever it may be, what are the two areas, your art in an area of need for a specific group of people? Where does that intersection? And maybe we can create something around that people will be interested in. I'm very interested in haiku, so I'm able to write haiku that I haven't written before and tie it in. Making art on your own terms can also be a way to make art for other people too, because they get what they need and you also get what you need to feel creatively fulfilled. If you have an example of a project that you are working on that ties in art or your creativity in another area, I would love to see it in the comments. So that way we can get people thinking about ideas that they can do for their own approach. Because the more we can get people to believe that this is possible with their art, the more we can get artists to live independently.